Okay, everybody, hello. I am Bill Ann, and you are?
Daniel Turiak, also known as Gucci on the Heliheads Show.
Heliheads Show, Daniel Tariak. And you competed this year at the Nats 2021 in the MA class.
Advanced class.
Advanced class. And you won it for that class.
Yes, I did. It was definitely, I've been kind of going at it since last September. I started with just an idea that I wanted to get back into competing. Competed a long time ago as a kid. And I say, well, let me see what I could do. And I kind of started changing over to like an F3C setup. And I wanted to compete again. So it started last September. And finally, this year, I made it to Muncie for a couple of days early before IRCHA. And I was able to do some competing. Yeah.
And so what was the competition like? I think it was basically like you had to get up, you had to be there, you had to get up at 6, you had to be there by 8 and be ready to fly at 8 o'clock in the morning and go the whole day, right?
That's right. So we kind of had a pretty packed schedule because it wasn't just my class, but it was all the other classes too. So we had sportsman class, which is a class lower than advanced. We had one class higher than the advanced class, which was masters unofficial. And then we had the top class, which is F3C class. Okay. That's the internationally recognized class, which Nick Maxwell and the likes to be that compete, like Chris Diamante and Mike Goza and so on and so forth. So we weren't the only ones that flew throughout the day. It was all the other classes too. Started at 8 and we ended as late as almost 5 o'clock.
Okay, wow.
Yep.
Yeah, it seemed to me kind of like a grueling schedule, but they had a good turnout this year, though.
That's correct. So not my class, but in sportsman class had 10 entrants or entries. Ours only had 2, but then Masters Unofficial had at least, I think it was 6, 5 or 6. F3C had a pretty good turnout because unfortunately for them this year the Worlds got canceled. So we had Nick Maxwell, Chris Diamante, just Gordy. Okay. And he was actually in the lower class in Masters, but they all were able to attend. Yep. Okay. So full day.
Okay.
Long day.
A long day.
Yep.
And what I really like was that, I always feel that there is those people out there that they want to know what the competition is like. Okay. And I really think that yourself being on Heliheads and, for example, Telerotor, those guys, and I think like for you, it was kind of like I could follow your story on the podcast throughout the year on how you were preparing for the competition.
Yeah. So I tried to do my best on the show to kind of share my experience because a lot of it, I think people don't get into it because the fear of unknown, right? And I tried to I take that approach, which is if I share my experience, people hear it and go, well, if Gucci can do it or Daniel can do it, so can I. And it's not easy, but it's not that complicated. It's all about setting the goal and just taking one step at a time. And let me tell you, when I first started, it was like, am I even going to be able to do this? Because I just set it up like everybody else, 3D, right? I wanted to do 3D in the beginning, even though I wasn't capable of doing 3D. But I will tell you this, I took a lot of time. I did a lot of hovering. Okay. But believe it or not, the lot of hovering that I did actually turned out that it helped me do 3D and be more comfortable on the 3D machines.
Yeah, that's the thing I've heard before.
Yes. I mean, I was talking to Chris Diamante about this, and he was sharing the same experience. He feels that since he started practicing F3C, his other flying greatly improved. A lot of it is because it has to be slow and precise. Fast spiros or fast descents and ascent, that's not something that F3C or the lower classes really go for. It's all about control. Okay. If you could control your helicopter location, you control your speed, your ascent, descent, and all that, you could be successful. Okay. You don't have to be a pro. Okay. Yep.
So what was it like actually practicing? Like did you spend? It seemed to me like you were definitely spending a considerable amount of time out at the field practicing.
So yeah, so generally speaking, I have a family, right? I do work full time, right? So what the way I kind of worked it out is that I went out during the week 3 days. But when I say 3 days, it was lunchtime, 30 minutes. I did two 15-minute hover flights. And then on weekend, I went and did my upstairs maneuvers. So like the more aerobatic type maneuvers. And to be honest, it's kind of one of those things. I'm glad I did it that way because, we all fly. I was able to do circuits and certain things. So I felt more comfortable in the upstairs maneuvers versus the hovering. But because I hover so much, that actually turned out, I think, fairly good. Not perfect by any means, but it was a lot. It was at least pretty much four days a week. 3 days were very short, 30 minutes focused. And then the actually fourth day, which would be the weekend, I did maybe like 3 to 4 hours. And I always had somebody to kind of look out and make sure that, everything lined up a little bit. I don't have anyone that flies F3C in my field. So a lot of it was spent talking to people. And then based on my discussions with them, I took it and translated it into my practice routines.
So that does sound like a good amount of work that you did put in.
It really is. But, and a lot of people get discouraged by that. But I always tell them, I tell them, just take one maneuver, one hovering maneuver, take one upstairs maneuver. And if that's all you could do, then focus your energy on that. And when you get comfortable there, go to the next, So it's not to discourage people from entering. It's just, it does take time, both setting up your heli. But that's the crazy thing is this year, I competed again. I had the Genesis, which is a F3C type machine. But the other person in my class actually had a logo. So, like a lot of people are like, well, do I need an F? No, you don't. You could literally take a 550 size heli and fly the same and probably, beat anyone that has an F3C machine. It's not a requirement. So you just want to do your best. Yep.
So what type of, do you have any good tips on like the specific setup that you use for your helicopter? Like a head speed or maybe pitch, just in general?
So there's no set speed, right? What I could tell you is that hovering the lowest head speed possible where the helicopter is still stable and locked in. So for example, on my Genesis, I was down to around 1400. For hovering maneuvers. My upstairs maneuvers, 1900. And the way you set up your throws is you set them up just fast enough to do what you needed to do. So I started for hovering. Let's say I took, I flew V-bar, right? So I had agility 100. I started with 60. I cut it in half off the bat, just about, and then I went down and I settled around 30.
Oh wow! For your hover?
For my hover on my agility, so it's super slow, but don't just turn it down.
Okay.
Work yourself, down to that area where the heli, it's almost like you just want to go drag it by the skids and move it to the location. It kind of feels that way. Upstairs maneuvers, especially for entry level, you really, really have to tone down your pitch. You have to tone down your cyclics, so everything is nice and smooth. I saw a lot of people that it was hard for them, and just to do a roll, right? Because they did a roll, and when they were inverted, they would do a pop because that's what they do 3D. So start to your normal and get it down where you become smooth. Sometimes reducing your collective range from 13 to 10 and a half, you're going to have loops like they're perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's pretty good. And now you started out with the V-Control, but I think you did switch over to Futaba.
That's correct. So I was able to fly all the maneuvers on V-Control. The problem I had was that Futaba offers just a few extra features. Not a must, right? But it's just a few features that makes it that much smoother. The problem was that I run Scorpion, ESC, and motor. So the governor, I'm still working on taking some of the the undesirable, so to speak, speed up once you get to a quarter throttle. Just some of those things, but it's all fixable, but you just have to spend the time. But yeah, I started V Control. I went to Futaba. It was a transition, but you know, there's so many great guys in our hobby that I was able to just talk with them. I was able to sit down with them at a Fun Fly. Robert Monty being one of them, you know, and he's been doing, yeah. And if he didn't know, he said, "Hold on, I know somebody." So that's kind of some of those things that you have to do. I did. It's not a must. You know, that's why I tell people, like, well, do I have to get this? No. You know.
And speaking of that, I mean, I've also heard a lot, you know, that it's like when you actually go to compete and then you meet with people there, you learn a lot.
Yeah. So one thing I did before the Nationals, I did compete down in Virginia. We did the Mid-Atlantic Heli Championship. So I was able to compete. There was also only 2 of us there. The one person that beat me there was Shaggy Parker. Right, but Shaggy's been competing for years now. Right, so it was my first competition, so to speak, in helis. So he beat me, but I was close enough because he didn't practice. I practiced, right? But I was close enough. I was like, so I do have a chance. You know, it's all about practice. Yep. But I learned a lot there. You know, and then when I came here to the Nationals, there was some things like, you know, the last maneuver, flying maneuver in my class was a 180-degree landing. You could do under power or auto. By the end of my 7th round, I decided to do an auto. It was my first time I did a 180-degree landing auto. All right, so it's kind of part of that process, right? You could go to the Nationals, but if you have a chance to go to a smaller competition, do it. You learn a lot, and you have time to, so to speak, see what your weakness is. Like, I knew my upstairs maneuver. We have like a pullback half loop type maneuver. I messed it up in Mid-Atlantic. At the Nats, I cleaned it up a little bit. So it's a process, you know. Do as many as you can. You could just come to the Nationals, but I highly encourage to find one of those competitions. Yep.
So, congratulations on the win. And what are the plans for next year?
So I think definitely I'm considering moving up to the next level. There's some changes in the classes and the maneuver list, but I think right now is my end goal is F3C and compete up there with Nick Maxwell and most likely lose. But the fact, but the fact is that I'm not looking for first place. You know, I'm looking to have a challenge. And to me, somebody like Nick Maxwell, well, they set the standard. Like, this is where he is. Yes, he's been doing it for a long time. I'm probably never going to get to that level. But if he pushes me to be half the pilot he is, I'm okay with that. You know? So next level, maybe 2 levels up. I don't know. We'll see. Yep.
Pretty sweet. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Well, thank you very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Bill. Have a good one.
All righty.